So, good morning and welcome to our final session in the capacity building series with the Latino Coalition. We're going to round it out with succession planning. Succession planning is the foundation of your organization's sustainability to ensure that you make a lasting impact. And for those of you who are founders and those of you who are been with your organizations for some time, it's really about legacy building. When we talk about succession planning, it means a lot of things, but people tend to have, their own one specific idea of what that means. But today we're going to talk about why succession planning is important to nonprofits, the elements of a good succession plan, and how to operationalize that succession plan. I know when I was executive director, I hated when people talked at me. I was busy, busier than busy, and I didn't want people to talk at me like, "Tell me what to do." Like I don't have time to figure things out, so tell me what to do. So I try to take that approach in most of my webinars. I let you know what things are, why they are, the reason why they are, and then how to operationalize that. So today won't be any different. For those of you, I don't know what's going on with technology today. For those of you who've joined me for the first time, welcome. I think we have all veterans today, but if not, I'm Amber Wynn. I am a 30-year nonprofit veteran. I've done everything from emptying the trash to giving out $7 million annually as a funder. I've worked in every sector: government, nonprofit, academia. And right now, my most pleasurable role is serving the most amazing individuals on the planet. That would be you, my nonprofit leaders. As a nonprofit consultant, succession planning. Succession planning is huge and it often goes undervalued and overlooked. When individuals start their nonprofits, they start with passion and commitment to their community, dedicated to doing all the work. And then what typically happens is they get sucked into what I call the minutia hell, right? You're doing all things all the time for everybody, and it leaves very little time for you to do what we're going to talk about today, which is to bulletproof your nonprofit. And that's how I look at succession planning. It's bulletproofing your nonprofit from a lot of unseen and unforeseen things happening. So, what happens when you lose a leader? Well, number one, you lose that institutional knowledge, right? People who've been in your organization, they know the players, they know the systems, they know the clients. And so when that person leaves, you lose that. And people don't really take that for granted, or they do take that for granted. They don't understand that that's a huge loss. You lose relationships when people are doing outreach in the community, they establish relationships and people do things based off of relationships. I know when I was in corporate, my supervisor was like, Amber, go get this and go get that. And I'm like, hold up, Bob. That's, there's a certain way that you talk to people. I understand you got a VP behind your name, but I have connected with people and I get things done, not because Bob said, but because I've established a relationship. That also happens in our communities, right? People know you, they know that you're down for the cause. They know that you understand their lifestyle. So when you lose a person, you lose those connections a lot of times. Continuity. Yes, you can replace that person, but if that person had a certain type of personality, or if they had a certain way of doing things, or they just connected to people in certain types of ways, or they delivered the program differently. This person's been delivering this program for 5, 10 years and then they're gone. The community's gotten used to it and they're like, this other person you brought in is a goober. Like they don't understand how we work. So it creates some friction, right? Also, when you lose a person, sometimes you lose credibility or trust. This person has come in, they've earned their stripes, they've done what they needed to do in our community to be deemed credible. They've earned the trust, and you can't just always switch somebody in and out. And then let's just keep it real. When you lose a leader, you lose manpower. So now people have to, step in and pick up that extra weight. So losing a person is really huge in a nonprofit. We know that because we already wear 17 hats, right? And would you be surprised to know that only 29% of nonprofits have a written succession plan in place? Only 29%. That's really low. What does that say? Well, it says that 71% don't have one, right? It says that 46% of executive directors expect to retire in 5 years, but they don't have a successor. When we talk about nonprofit survival rates, 70% of nonprofits fail to make the transition to the second generation. What does that mean? That means you're the founder, and 70%, like you're the founder, but 70% of nonprofits fail to make the transition to the second generation. So the person who would replace you, right? Only 30% make that. That's pretty high. Um, 88% don't survive the third generation, and no surprise, 97% don't survive the fourth generation. I'll tell you why that's concerning for me. Number one, as a founder who typically puts in 10, 20, 30 years building out this organization, what does it say that, 88 don't survive to the third generation or 97? That means all of that work was for naught because that organization no longer continues to survive. So when I think of succession planning, I think of it from the perspective of a community is losing the resources that they need. And so with all of the things that you do, and I know you do all the things, a million and one, we want to think about your legacy. If you're in a nonprofit that is providing vital services, we want to make sure that your organization makes the transition to the second generation. And if you have a new executive director who's not the founder, then yoo-hoo, yay. But we want to make sure that that third generation and that fourth generation also comes into fruition because our community needs us. Any any thoughts about this? Like, it was jarring when I saw this. I'm like, well, the reality is a lot of our founders stay in for the long haul. They are usually long-term folks. When they started their nonprofits, it was because they started it with passion, and most of them stay in for the long haul. But when we talk about sustainability, succession from the place of sustainability, it has to be deliberate and thoughtful. It's very rare that someone just rises up the ranks and is ready to take over when a nonprofit executive leaves. It's very rare. So it has to be deliberate. It has to be deliberate and thoughtful. And when you think about sustainability, this is what I mentioned earlier, it's to disaster proof your organization. We don't want we don't want things to happen in such a way that it just really blows up your nonprofit. So that means you have to have a plan in place so that your organization can weather the inevitable challenges of leadership transition. It is inevitable. Um, what are the biggest factors for not implementing a succession plan? Finances is the hugest. And what do I mean by that? Founders typically don't have a pension plan. For those of you who are, in the budgeting side, pension plan, we're struggling just to make salaries, right? So what happens is a nonprofit founder and executive director will hold on to this position because it is their livelihood. And so the founder must work. And so in order to have um, a viable succession plan, we've got to start thinking about how are we going to make sure that this founder is financially sound? And it's going to go back to, diversifying your revenue stream so that you have money to come in so that you can give your founder, that wonderful send off and bring in new leadership and not wait for that founder to die, right? Because you can't afford to give them that pension and then bring somebody in. When I say deliberate and intentional, this is what I'm talking about. Having the plan that says, hey guys, our founder has been doing this for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. They really need to retire. So we're going to map out this plan so where we can, make sure that they're comfortable in their financial situation, but at the same time, start grooming somebody to come in. The second reason is just lack of planning, right? Um, Not just at the C-suite level. I'm talking all levels in the organization. Someone gets sick heaven forbid, they get cancer or whatever, that position is now vacant. You didn't plan for it. They got sick, or something happens, they die, or what is very common in the nonprofit sector, because we're not paying people their value and their worth, they find something and they leave because there's a better opportunity. These are the biggest factors for organizations not implementing a succession plan: lack of planning and finances. Um, there are multiple types of reasons and purposes for succession planning. The first being a strategic leadership development effort, right? We know that our person is either failing in health, they're tired, y'all, and they just really want to retire, step down. You want the organization to go into a different direction. And so, as the leader, as the board, as the executive director, it is going to be a strategic effort. The second type is a defined succession plan. Your executive director has told you, I'm ready to go. Y'all need to figure this out, but I'm ready to go. I'm going to give you 2 or 3 good years, but I'm ready to go. That is defined and planned. Or it's an emergency, right? The person gets sick, or the person just, leaves, or whatever, at whatever level. And so it's an emergency and you have to respond. These are the three types that you will typically experience when it comes to succession plan. My favorite, of course, is number one, is when it's strategic and it's planned and everyone gets to skip off into, the sunset. That's not always the case. So you need to plan for all three. And when I say it doesn't necessarily have to be at the C suite, if you've done your job at building a healthy culture in your organization, then your person, your outreach person, your program manager, your finance person, they're going to tell you, hey guys, I'm looking at another opportunity, or I'm thinking of going in a different direction, or this is just not for me anymore. And they're going to give you enough notice so that you can start planning for it. But if you don't have that culture and that loyalty in your organization, guess what you're going to get? You might get a 2 weeks notice. And so that's when we hit number three, some emergency, response to things. So it's just important that you keep this at the top of your mind, because again, this is really going to impact your organization. Think about it. If your finance person taps out, right? Um, and so when we think about that, how can we avoid some of that? Well, we make succession planning a part of your culture, right? You want to engage your board and staff in a commitment to manage transition intentionally. When you onboard people, when you are doing your performance evaluations, when you're doing your staff meeting, you have those frank conversations and you say, look, guys, we run a lean ship. And so our community is really counting on us. If you're thinking about leaving, let us know so that we can plan, so that there's continuity in the program, and so that our clients aren't suffering. But if you are the type of person where you're micromanaging, your people aren't doing enough, you're barking at them, if it's stressful, then it's just not going to happen, right? So for the founder, what you'd like to create is that they are a part of the agency's sustainability plan. What does that mean? That you're having conversations with them about, okay, what are you thinking? How many years do you have left? Like, if money wasn't an issue, you know, 9 times out of 10, if they've been in it for a long time, like, well, if money wasn't an issue, I'd leave tomorrow. But you want to say to them, I'm noticing that you're slowing down, or I'm noticing that there's burnout. Like, where are you? If they're like raring to go and they're not like petering out, it's like, all right, but we want to make sure that you have that option. So let's talk about, like, how many years do you want to be in this role? If a person says, I want to die in this role, we're like, okay, if you want to die in this role, we still need to be able to have someone step into this position after you die. So let's talk about what that looks like. More importantly, if it's the founder, we need to pass down that institutional knowledge in those relationships. I was involved with a program manager. His dad had started the Boys and Girls Club here in Los Angeles, 1968, out the back of a pickup truck. It's this famous story. His name was Lou Dantzler. And he started with 6 kids, and he would go around the neighborhood, pick them up in the back of this pickup truck. and he ended up buying property on 51st in Vermont. It was a warehouse. It was a supermarket, and he changed it into a boys and girls club. And then from there, they bought more property. They started buying the crack houses on the block, right? It's your rags to riches story, but it was true. They bought a house. Venus and Serena came in, and they, whatever you do with the champagne and the cutting of the ribbon or whatever. And they have a tennis court. Then they had, a whole playground. Then they bought another house. They bought up the whole block. Now they have a whole soccer field. And all of this was because Lou Dantzler shook hands, kissed babies, and picked up people's kids, my kids included. I was a single mom, and for $75 a year, my boys were safe. They picked them up for an additional 65 from school, and they were at the Boys and Girls Club. And I loved Lou. And one day Lou had a stroke because Lou didn't take care of his diabetes, the sugar, as my grandma would call it. And he had a stroke. And that was it. There was no succession plan because Lou ran that club based off of handshakes. He had the elected officials wrapped around his finger. He had donors galore. And so one day he was gone in 2008. I remember it like it was yesterday. And so Corey, his youngest son, stepped up to be the executive director. And Mark, my boyfriend at the time, was the program manager. But they didn't have a succession plan in place. It just so happens, he just happened to have his boys grow up in the club. So Corey runs the organization for 3 years. And then my boyfriend, Mark, he died. He died from lung cancer. And so now they don't have a program manager. So Derek steps into the role. Derek was, I don't know what Derek's role was, but he was no Mark Dantzler. And so there was no continuity in the program. Mark was 6'4", and he would, every summer, he would open up the radio station and they would blast it on the campus, and he had no rhythm, y'all. He had a heart of gold, but he had no rhythm. And every summer he would open up the program by getting out on the campus, and they would dance and they would open up, the program. Derek didn't do that. So the kids are like, well, there's no summer. Like, we didn't open it up. You know what I mean? And so, yeah. So that was 2011. And then 3 years later, the board decided that they wanted to go into another direction. The board decided, oh, they didn't want Corey. Now, they weren't doing any evaluations of Corey, but they decided they wanted to go in a different direction. And guess what happened? Funders stopped funding the organization because for some reason the board thought, oh, it's the Boys and Girls Club of Los Angeles, and that is what got them their money. Nope. So they fired Corey. Corey went on to another organization, and 3 weeks later, he gets a call from the board. Hey, so this funder wants you to pick up the check. Will you pick up the check for us? And he was like, you fired me. What am I picking up the check for, right? Like, well, they won't give it to anybody unless it's a Dantzler. He's like, yeah, you should have thought about that before you fired me. So when we talk about transitions and we talk about changes in leadership, they have to be thoughtful, because all of those things are integrated. Relationships and continuity and those things are important. So if you are looking to go in a different direction, then you have those conversations with the founder. Hey, we're looking to go into a different direction. Are you willing to take more training? Corey's like, they never even talked to me. They didn't even evaluate me. They just decided that I wanted to be out. Maybe they could have salvaged that relationship just by having him go in a different direction. Succession planning is important, right? It's important for the livelihood of the organization. So what would have been ideal is, Lou knew he was sick, put into place something where he's training the next executive director. But Lou also had this thing called founder syndrome, which is really huge. And this is my club. I created it, and he did. But what that could also do is block the growth of the organization. Founder syndrome is when a person starts an organization and they become so tied to the power that they have that they don't allow new ideas and new people to contribute to the growth of the organization. So that could be an issue. But if it's not an issue, you really want to get the founder engaged in what's going to happen after them. The board is responsible for hiring, supporting, and firing the executive director. So ideally, your board is going to be the one that's going to lead this. Now, if you have a lame board who really you can't even get on the phone or have them, get together for meetings, it's going to be a challenge. And so that is something you need to take on. Start rotating those deadbeat board members off, start rotating these high powered people who understand the vision of your organization. And a part of that is creating a strategy for interim, leadership or replacement, and how they're going to train them. That is the board's responsibility. So it's important that you understand there's layers, and that's why it's not going to just happen overnight. But what should you be expecting? Well, when we talk about managing transition, your staff should be involved as well, right? If you're loyal to your staff and you're providing them with training and you're being transparent with your communication and you are giving them leadership opportunities, this is an opportunity for them to step up. If you say, we see that we're going to expand, we've got a grant coming in, we've got some funding coming in, we want new leaders, we want people to move up. Your staff should be excited about that and they want to be a part of that. Or, Amber's pregnant, she's saying she may not come back. We need to fill that role with someone from inside who have experience, who know the the mission and the values of the organization, so that we don't have to teach that again. We're just going to, move that person up so they can step into that role. So what does this slide mean? This slide means that succession planning is intentional, and if it's done right, it's going to involve all of those that are going to be impacted: the founder, the board, the staff. If you have an amazing executive director and you're like, we don't want to lose our executive director, wonderful. What you say to the executive director is, we hope you stay with us for forever. But the reality is life happens. So we need to put something in place just in case something happens. If you get sick or if you decide to leave us. And then also we need to put something in place at lower levels, right? Something happens for our staff, we need to be able to transition. So what does that look like? Well, the first steps is to identify your gaps and opportunities. So you're going to look at your organizational chart and identify critical positions. If this position was vacant, how would it impact the organization? If we lost our CEO, that would be tragic. If we lost our CFO, that would be tragic. If we lost our grant writer or our program manager, you're going to look at those roles that, yeah, okay, it would be easy to replace a grant writer because they're not, central to the day-to-day workings of our organization. We could be all right if we lost our community outreach person. You know who is critical in the position, not the person, the position, right? Positions that are most critical to the future success of the organization. And when you do that, you have an opportunity to look at your organization's vulnerabilities. It's like, ooh, if we lost this development person, we really would be lost because we're only staying afloat because this person is amazing. So this role, this position is critical to our organization. The other thing is you want to then identify internal candidates. The candidates with the same values and skills and the desire to take on those critical jobs. So if Amber wasn't here, who would be the next logical person to step up into her role? And what that should do is let you know, okay, well, we have qualified candidates who can step into that role. Maybe she's a little rough on the edges, so we need to just smooth those edges. But if you look at your staff and you're like, ooh, we don't have anybody to replace these critical roles, then it gives you a sense of what you need to do in terms of building out your strategy. After you identify these people, you want to talk to them and say, hey, would you be interested in moving up in the organization? Because you may see that this person would be an amazing fit, but they're like, yeah, no, I've seen what happens in those staff meetings. I'm not interested. Thank you very much. Or somebody would be like, yes, I think that I would love to take on this opportunity. What do I need to do? I don't know if I'm qualified. And, but if you go through these roles and you identify people and they are like, no, I'm not interested, then that means that you need to start an external search. You need to say, okay, none of our people inside want to fill these roles. So in order for us to be prepared and planned, you need to have an external search, um, and at least an external search strategy in place, right? So let's talk about how we create the structure for training and development. So your person has said, yes, I'm interested. What does that look like? Well, you're going to identify your employees that are interested in moving into senior positions. Then you're going to identify their competency gaps. So the person who's going to take over Amber's role may be amazing out in the community, wonderful with building relationships. Um, the clients love her to death, but she has no true leadership skills. She doesn't know how to, work her budget. She doesn't know how to train her staff. So after they said, yes, I'd love to do it, what do I need to do? You do an evaluation of said skills and you're like, all right, this person has these competency gaps. And then you begin to prepare them for that eventual succession. What does that look like? It looks like professional development, right? It could be something as simple as coaching if those competencies are soft skills. So, we're going to meet once a month and then, maybe we do case studies. Well, what would you do in the event of? Or, maybe it's mentoring. I'm going to talk to you every month and we're going to take on these different topics to expose you to leadership at a higher level. Maybe it's job shadowing. Maybe you have two program managers and you want to bring in another one. So you're going to say, all right, Alyssa, I want you to shadow James and just get a feel for, what the position looks like and what you should be doing. Maybe it's just a gradual increase in more advanced responsibilities. Right now, this person is only responsible for outreach and programs. Give them a budget or allow them to start working on the budget, allow them to start doing presentations, allow them to start doing more of those things that they would be doing in this role. It's safe because you're not in, frantic mode. You have people who can say, all right, I do my budget on the, 15th of every month. Come into my office and I'll show you what I'm doing, right? Or maybe you're like, all right, this is going to take a deeper dive. So we want you to go back to school and get a certification or, get your degree so that when the time comes, you are prepared. And guess what that's going to say to your potential candidate? That you are invested in them. You are so invested in them that you are going to provide them with this professional development to get them ready. You're not going to just throw them into, the lion's den and say, figure it out, and they fail. You're saying to them, we see potential in you so much so that we're going to help you to develop it. There are a lot of benefits from planning early, right? It gives your employees the time to acquire the skills and experience to perform well. Things happen. The worst thing that can happen is if somebody drops dead and you're thrown into this position and you're not ready for it. But if you have a plan, they can work with people, learn the skills, and feel confident about stepping into that. It shows your employees, not just the person who's stepping into the role, but the rest of the employees that you're willing to invest in their growth and that you want the organization to grow. In the nonprofit sector, it's important that we demonstrate these types of things to our employees because we can't pay them 9 times out of 10 what they're worth. But when you do things like investing in their educational growth, that knowledge is theirs. And so when they're like, oh my gosh, this organization has paid for me to go get these certificates, that means that they care for me. So you can demonstrate your commitment, and this is how you generate loyalty because you're investing in them, then they're going to give back to the organization. It also helps to reveal the weaknesses in your processes and procedures. If you are having somebody train or shadow or whatever, this person may have a different perspective and they're going to say, well, why are you doing it that way? Why is it 7 steps? You can just do it in 2. And the person will be like, oh, we've always done it that way. I never thought about it that way. Good point. So it helps to reveal weaknesses because if a person's been doing this job for the last 10 years, they're just doing it, right? This is what they've created. It doesn't necessarily mean it's done the right way. When you have new blood and new eyes, it gives you an opportunity to improve the internal processes in your organization. And it also uncovers opportunities for positive change, right? Well, I've been having issues with Alyssa and da 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 da. How would you handle it? Well, I would give Alyssa more responsibility. Da, 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 da. So you have an opportunity to get new ideas and to get just a different way of looking things. It encourages questioning of norms that may have become dated or inefficient. This happens all the time. People just do things the same way because they don't have time. So they just do it the same way. You bring in new blood, you get new ways of doing things that make you more efficient. And it allows your retiring employees to act as a sounding board. This new person is in this role. They're excited, but they're nervous. If the retiring person is still available for them, it allows them to ask questions like, well, what do I do when this happens? Or what do I do when they say this? Oh, what? And so the retiring person can troubleshoot the problems, and that's going to smooth the transition. So there are a lot of benefits of planning early, as opposed to the person being shoved into this position and having to figure it out on their feet. That's stressful. It's stressful, 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 and you just don't want it to happen. So you want to avoid from moving the organization away from its core branding by preparing internal successors. If you have people that you've already invested time in, they have that institutional knowledge, they live your core values, you'd rather have them move into the roles versus having to bring in outsiders, and they're going to be like, well, over at my organization, we did it this way. Yeah, that was your organization, boo boo, but this is how we do it here. And if you have people who have already been trained to do it the way that you do it, they understand the core values, the nuances of your organization. It's also cheaper, if I can just be honest, to move your people up versus bringing outside people in. So that's the ideal goal you want to have. But when we look at the process, it looks something like this. Um, you want to provide them with training courses or challenging assignments, help them to um, plan out what their career is. Maybe they are coordinators right now. And you're like, well, what would you like to be in this organ? Where do you see yourself? Ooh, I really would love to be, a senior director. All right, so here's the strategy that we're going to do to get you to that. For the first 3 months, you're going to partner, with Cheryl on budgeting. And then after that, you're going to partner with Cynthia on training. And then after that, you're going to partner with Roger on outreach. And so they do these job rotations where they get these skill sets, right? And then they start to increase their competency. And as the leaders, you guys get to give feedback, right? But you want to give multiple methods, not only for them to grow, but for the organization to have an input on that person's growth, right? Um, but here's the other thing you want to do. You want to make sure that it is a system, that it's not just for this one person, but it's something that you can replicate to fill those gaps and holes in your organization. You want to be able to assess if this critical role is vacant, this critical role is vacant. These are the number of people we can have step in it. It's called a managerial bench strength. It's like football. Who's on your bench, right? If our quarterback goes out, we've got second string and we've got, a third person. If our kicker goes out, our bench is strong. You want to have a strong bench in your organization. And this is really, really important. You want to avoid the heir apparent. Some people are like, well, I'm not going to get the role anyway. Amber's been, hanging out with the executive director for lunch. So she's the heir apparent. Maybe Amber is not the most qualified. Maybe Amber is not the right fit. You want to create a process that is fair and equitable and allows the best person to step into this role. And you definitely want to strive for diversity. When we talk about leadership development, internal courses or workshops that are taught by managers so that you're teaching the values from the organization, right? Action learning programs. A lot of times we'll say, okay, well, go do that. But there is no accountability. When you do performance evaluations, you set goals and say, okay, Amber, you said that you wanted to step into this role. Here's how we're going to do it. Every year we're going to set goals. You're going to do a certain number of courses, you're going to job shadow, you're going to give them the resources that they need, but you want to make sure that both this potential candidate that you're grooming and the organization are on the same page. This person may go through these trainings that you've set up for them and decide, yeah, no, that's not for me. That's good. You want them to figure that out sooner than later. Or they may say, oh my gosh, when I was working with Cynthia, I really got geeked out about this training and development. Do you, I really want to do that. And so you pivot, you still have a strong bench, but now you know what they're excited about. So your action learning plans will help you to create accountability, to keep both the potential candidate and the organization on the same page. And you can do things like stretch assignments. Now, this usually works for younger people, but if you say it the right way, it may work for the more mature individual. Stretch assignments are those things that are done outside of your regular goals and objectives. And this is how I position it for my direct reports. Okay, so are you excited about what you're doing? Well, no, not really. And it's the nonprofit sector. You're gonna get this. Well, what is it that you really like to do? Well, I really would like to become a training and development person. Well, we don't have the budget for that right now, but I hear you, I feel you, and I see you. And if this is something that you want to do, let's stretch your muscles a little bit. I'm going to give you a stretch assignment. I want you to go over there and work with Lakeisha. She's going to allow you to deliver a module. It's going to get your feet wet. It's going to, get rid of the jitters. It's going to allow you to do it without doing it. It's a stretch assignment. Now, it has to be positioned that way because what will happen is people will say, she got me doing this extra work and ain't paying me. Like, that's just the nature of the nonprofit sector. But if they are committed to stepping into this role, they need to get the experience. So we label those as stretch assignments. Them safely being able to take on the role, trying it out, getting the experience before the position is actually open. So it's really just how you frame it. Executive coaching, it can be just coaching from one of your executives. I don't know what the budgets are, but typically budgets in nonprofits, they don't allow for you to bring outside coaching. They exist. I work with coaches all the time because I deliver on tangible outcomes. I am a consultant. I am not a coach. But coaching, especially at the executive level, is really, really recommended for nonprofits because you get to help them create their persona. You get to help them create their strategy. And so coaching is an awesome way of doing that. When we talk about decision making, of course, you want to consider a diverse pool of candidates and not only just your direct reports. Maybe your direct reports are awesome. Maybe they're not. If you have outside individuals who can grow in the company, that might bring in new blood, new excitement. And you definitely want to get your board engaged because they are going to be responsible for fundraising for these roles, fundraising for these opportunities. And so this is about creating a process, right? Talent development, identifying your leadership, and the decision making, creating the system within your organization. I've been talking a lot, y'all. I'm gonna pause for a second. Are there any questions? No? All right. It's a lot of work. But when I tell you, once you set up the system, it's not so much. So it's the front end that you're investing in because once you create it, this is what you will do for all of your positions, right? So what does that look like? When we talk about supporting our staff in increasing their skills, getting them ready for new positions, it's about providing them with the resources to grow their skills and get additional experience. On the screen, take a screenshot of it, are some resources of agencies, organizations that provide free nonprofit training. You've got Udemy, the Nonprofit Cooperative, Nonprofit Ready, Nonprofit Learning Lab, Class Central, Charity How To, Philanthropy University, Coursera, and Microsoft. These are all free or very, 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 very low cost because I don't know where people are with their budgets. If you are going to ask your staff to get ready for the position, you want to provide them with resources. So I try to provide resources that you can then, say, hey, check out one of these platforms. You can go through it or have your administrative assistant go through it and say, okay, Udemy provides training on accounting. So if you're trying to get a person to learn about the budget, you can say, you can go to Udemy or you can go to Coursera. They have some accounting courses. Take, course 654 and 321, right? So that they can get prepared for this position. If it's a course on Excel or PowerPoint, okay, go to Microsoft. They have a whole plethora of courses on how to increase your Excel skills. So you want to be able to provide them with some resources to improve themselves. Because here's the thing, you don't want people to step into the roles who aren't qualified. So you're going to support them by saying, all right, I need you to take these 5 courses, this fiscal year. That's going to help get you ready for this position. This is going to be my last course with you guys, my last webinar. But in 2024, I will be also providing a membership site. I'm giving you free sources because mine ain't free, but you know me, you know how I deliver my programs. I don't know how, I mean, most of these are online, but again, you want to be able to provide them something. If you haven't already signed up for my newsletter, um, please sign up for my newsletter because I am going to be promoting when I am opening up my courses and my membership site. You can expect from my membership site what you get from me every Thursday. Just keeping things real, keeping them so where we can understand what the terms mean, what the goals are, what the back behind the closed door conversations are about things like that. These organizations aren't going to give you that, but what they will give you, your staff, people downline, are the very basics. And sometimes that's all you need to get people to the next level. Okay. So I hope you guys took a screenshot of those resources. When we talk about an effective succession plan, it looks like this, right? You identify the key positions, you do the talent assessment, you develop a plan, right, for them to evolve into this particular role. That's called development and training. You create a succession pool. You don't want just one person because that one person may leave, right? Thank you very much. You want to have a bench, a strong bench of qualified individuals to step into that role. Sometimes this development and training includes cross training, right? In a lot of our organizations, we have one person who does one thing well. And when they go, no one can do it. Cross training helps to alleviate some of that, right? And it also gets your people ready for transitioning into different role and picking up the slack when you have to, right? So development and training could be individual, but could also be cross training. Performance management. This is important. We talked about this in the slide before, right? You want to make sure that we are on the same page, and that comes through the evaluations. You meet with them, once a month, once a quarter. Hey, how's it going? What did you think about the training? Are you having any issues? What do you think about the job training? Can you offer us any feedback? That happens all in the performance management. Knowledge transfer, especially if you're doing the job shadowing or the mentoring. If it's the executive director that's transitioning out, if it's a senior director that's transferring out, remember, when they transfer out, they're taking that institutional knowledge. So you want to make sure that there's this knowledge transfer with the person who was in the role before, with the person who's coming in, so you can have this continuity in your programming and in your organization. Communication and transparency. So this is huge. A lot of leaders think, well, I'm going to do this on the low in the back. You need to be very upfront and open about creating succession plans. You want your staff to know that you are committed to continuity in your community. What does that look like? Listen, we have to have plans in place. Who is interested, if the position is open, in filling this role? That doesn't mean that this person is going to leave. That means that we need to always be prepared. So being open and being transparent will help to get you there. And then the last place is evaluation and adjustment. Maybe this person doesn't work. Maybe this plan doesn't work. We thought we could give them this online training. No one's really doing it. We need to bring somebody in-house that's actually going to do the training, or we need to do the training during staff meeting and train a group of people. So, but you got to evaluate and adjust. So this is like the picture of an effective succession plan strategy. And then last, I just want to close on what are some common mistakes to avoid? Well, number one, if you play favorites. Well, I want her, her, and her, but not him and not her. Like you want the best candidate. You don't want to play favorites. You want to give people all the opportunity and see what rises. Cream rises to the top. So you're going to give them the opportunity to throw their hat into the ring, give them the resources that they need, and see who's the best fit. You want to make sure that you have an objective process for spotting successors, right? So that's objective, not skewed, not, well, I heard that this person, so you're going to have a process in plan. It's not just, I like her, I don't like him. So these are some common mistakes. People play favorites, they're not objective, right? And then you want to address disappointment. If something's not working, you want to say it. Because if you don't say it, then that means this person thinks that they're doing a great job. This happens during your performance evaluations. And this allows you to course correct as well. And then 4, what you don't want to do is turn this process into a competition. All right, Amber, well, if you want this job, I guess you will be bringing me coffee in the morning, huh? You don't want to do that. You want it to be very professional and based on criteria that everybody understands, and it's the same across the board. The best person will fill this role. And then finally, you do not want to keep the succession planning process a secret. You want everybody in your organization to know we are making sure that we are solidifying this organization. We want to make sure if there's any holes that they will be filled, because if we have gaps in our organization, we're going to have gaps in our programming. If we have gaps in our programming, we're going to have issues in delivering the highest caliber of services to our community. And that's not what we're about. So you just, think about these things. But at the end of the day, succession planning helps the organization plan for the long term, right? Change happens fast. When your nonprofit knows where it's going, your team can plan for the future. If the succession plan is positioned as a part of your overall growth plan, then you create a path for retiring employees, and they can hand off their years of hard-earned knowledge and transition important working relationships before they leave, right? Lou didn't let anybody talk to his funders. So as a result, those funders were like, I don't feel comfortable with writing my check to you guys. And they should have, because it's not about the person. Yes, relationships are important, but it's about the work that's being done. If you're going to have a transition in your organization, if you're going to create different levels, if you're going to have that strong bench, then those people should be in those conversations, learning to establish those relationships with the key people who keep your organization going. The objective of the succession plan is to help your organization grow with intent as you identify and build plans for the vulnerabilities in other areas of your business. Remember, a nonprofit is a business. It's just a business with a philanthropic purpose. This is a business strategy, solidifying your infrastructure, making sure that your team is cross-trained, making sure that if someone steps out, removes themselves, or is removed, you can still weather that. The other benefits include, learning which areas need more innovation and setting realistic goals for growth and planning for the future talent need, right? Maybe right now, all your HR person is focusing on is hiring. Maybe they should start focusing on hiring and looking at the vulnerabilities in the organization and starting to create some type of process where we can start to identify potential individuals who may rise in the ranks in the organization. All right. So, what could a sample succession timeline look like? People say to me all the time, well, our founder isn't thinking about retiring. So, what was that? What does that look like? We don't want them to think that we're kicking them out. No, that's not the goal. Again, it's to address the what ifs. And typically a succession timeline is between, 4 to 6 years. If you're on the board and you're talking to your executive director and you're like, hey, so what are you thinking? And the executive director's like, I'm good, I can probably give you 5 years. Great. What do you start doing? The board, in tandem with the executive director or the founder, will start to build out this plan, and a part of that is a capital campaign. Well, we need to start, doing a special fundraising strategy so that when our founder walks out, our founder walks out with dignity and respect for what they've brought to this organization. That looks like a retirement plan, right? So they're going to have a chunk of money that has been raised over the past 4 years so that they are comfortable with leaving the organization, right? Then you're going to create a leadership team that is going to be actively involved in identifying the gaps in your organization and creating systems, right? You want to make sure that you have SOPs, standard operating procedures. Those are crucial. If you don't have SOPs, if a person leaves, then you're just left holding the bag. At least, though, if you have an SOP, they can read and see, okay, step one, here's here are our vendors, here are our collaborators. SOPs are really, really helpful when you're transitioning new people into new positions because they have the manual of how it goes. In our organization, one of the things that we did during our performance evaluations is to give the directors the responsibility of creating an SOP. They had an entire year to do it, right? And, if your organization is lean, maybe they have 2 years or 3 years to do it, but you want them to start developing SOPs, right? um, Compile job descriptions, conduct potential. This is when you start looking at your staff and say, hey, what position do you see yourself in the next 2 to 5 years? And start creating a plan. All right. Amber says she wants to go into training and development. We're going to give her some stretch projects. We're going to allow her to take some courses either for free that you've identified or that we're going to pay for to invest in her. You're going to start looking for the right CEO to replace your founder, get them in, start looking at the key strategic priorities. Right now, your founder is doing everything. When we hire this new founder, we only want them to focus on X, Y, and Z. So now you have, key strategic priorities. These are the top 3 things that we want them to focus on. So your new CEO is going to come in, your old CEO is going to transition out, but they're going to do some knowledge sharing, right? Transitioning together, sharing with them the institutional knowledge, connecting them with with the old relationships. And then there's a 90-day transition and you've planned for it, right? We know that this person wants to leave in 4 years, 6 years, but those last 90 days are going to be when all of that handoff is going to happen. So that's ideally 4 years. It could be more than that. I think more than anything, what's important is just to have a strategy, have a plan so that you're not taken off guard, so that your organization is not left in the lurch, right? You want to be sure that there is something in place. And maybe it's not perfect, but you won't be taken off guard and your organization won't be experience that tragedy that we're trying to tragedy proof your organization from. Any questions? Do any of you guys have a succession plan in place? Has this conversation been brought up in your organization? No, you guys are just doing the day-to-day grinding. You're like, succession plan, and we're just trying to get through the day, huh?
I have actually, Amber, and so
Okay.
what I do is I'm trying to train up my sons to take over the legacy.
Mhm.
And so what I do, and then let me know what you think about this. I know I need to put things in writing
Yeah.
for now because I don't have time for that. I just record myself like a video, what I'm doing, certain tasks. I'll say, you know, I'm doing this, I'm moving money here, or I'm budgeting this, or I'm writing a check for this. So I like actually physically record myself what I'm doing. And
Yeah.
then hopefully one day they can look back on that or they could put it on paper. But that's the easiest way for me to do it right now, at least to kind of explain what I do on a day to day to them and for
Mhm.
them to understand it rather than
Are
sitting
your
here.
are your boys interested in what it is that you're doing?
Oh yeah, they're going to school right now. They have their nonprofit management certificates. They're going to further that, but yes, they are. They're like educating themselves as well on what that looks like to take over. And they're going to we opened up a smaller center in
Mhm,
Aurora.
mhm.
So that's going to be like kind of their test to
Yeah, their
see how
training
they
ground.
manage and
Yeah.
operate that location.
Yeah. I love your idea. I would take it a step further, Lakeisha. If you have an administrative assistant, there are systems out there like Timmy and Rev or whatever. Download the audio from your videos, or you can even upload the videos, and it will just do the transcription. And then you just take that transcription and make it into an SOP.
Okay,
And now this generation, they like video.
they do. That's why I've
I
been doing
know,
it that
I
way.
know, I know. But from a business perspective, you can just take those videos, get the transcript, and have them packaged into SOPs.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
you said what were those tools?
Timmy, Temi, Rev, REV. There's a whole bunch out there. It's just you upload the audio or the video, and then it just transcribes it for you. But
Okay.
if you do a search for, software like Rev, and then they'll, bring up the other one. I use Rev.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. So yeah, that is it. What I'd like for you to do again is to complete the evaluation. Let me know how I can improve. It's always a challenge when you only have 90 minutes, though. I like to be more interactive, but Richard really wanted to be respectful of your time. You guys work so hard. So I find that it was a lot of talking too. And so I do apologize, but I hope that the information has been somewhat helpful. Um, your feedback is always welcome. If you haven't registered already, in the email with the evaluation, it asks, "Would you like to, join my newsletter?" Has anybody online joined my newsletter? I'd love for you to share your feedback, because I don't have time in my email for foolishness. So that's the practice that I do. I try not to send out anything that's it's a waste of time. Like we get too many emails already. But I try to every Thursday put a little smile on your face. You get a little Amber flavor. I'm not gonna lie. Resources like I give out ebooks and just resources to support you on your journey. I am your biggest cheerleader and I'm going to be there for you. And so it's my little way of just trying to lift you up on Thursdays. But it also, if you join the newsletter, it will let you know when I have the release of my courses, when I have the release of my membership site. But you can always go to my website, and there I have, under resources, I have a lot of free resources. If you want to work with me, you can do that there. But visit my website, make sure you take down the URL so that if you have any questions or you're looking for information, you can get it there. For this series, the video series, you will email Mason at latinocoalition.org. They have the library of all of the videos. So if you weren't able to attend one, you can get a download of those. Yeah, they belong to the Latino Coalition, so you'll have access to all of those. Yeah, that's it. Oh my goodness, I'm so sad. I'm so sad. When you come into community and you used to seeing people in your space. But it has been an amazing experience for me. I'm so excited about the work that you guys are doing. The other thing I want to do is give you my email. It's amber@amberwin.net. If ever you have a question or ever you need some support, just feel free to email me. I'm here. All right.